studio, we have Vanessa Portillo and Bryan Crabble from Garden Farms. We're talking steam. So that was a great description of your approach to gardening there, Vanessa. I like that music approach. So, Bryan, tell us about, I love hearing you talk about this stuff. You just amaze me. I want you to come to my house and hang out for days with me for figuring out my garden and my orchards and what have you. So tell us, first off, you have great stories about the history of gardening and where it all came from and why. I know we went from meat eaters to agriculturalists.
Well, yeah, we were definitely hunter-gatherers, so eating meat, and then, you know, it was kind of more gender role-based, where they would have the women and the children collecting, you know, berries or whatever they could throughout time. And then as civilization, actually this is from my high school history teacher, Mr. Paulai, shout out, but he would ask, you know, how did civilizations get started? And it was really just a surplus of that basic food stuff. So all cultures on Earth have as their basic food a carbohydrate. So you think, well, how about in Hawaii? Like that one always confused me until finally I learned about, you know, poi and taro root. So the Peloponnesians, you know, they had their staple crops, the canoe crops they called them. It was like 13 crops, sweet potatoes, taro root, and then a bunch of other stuff. But taro was like their basic carbohydrate that they had year round. For most European, you know, people from Europe, you know, ancestry-wise, it's going to be like farro and wheat and barley and all these different grain crops. In South America, Central America, it was corn and potato, you know, things like that. And in fact, potatoes, one of my favorite things is to talk to the kids is, you know, when the Europeans first came over to North and South America, they thought, oh, this plant's beautiful, the potato plant, but it's in the Solanum family, which is, you know, poisonous to people. You don't go around eating tomato leaves or potato leaves or green potatoes. So Europeans for over 150 years, they'd taken potatoes back with them, and they would grow the plant because they thought it was beautiful and lovely, but they weren't harvesting or eating potatoes. So I'm like, kids, what do you think about these people? 150 years, they're missing out on French fries and mashed potatoes. Aren't they just insane? So, you know, that's always just the interesting history and cultural things that weave their way in. And then the kids, you know, it kind of sparks their interest a little bit and then cements things for them. And then, you know, we get into talking, that's my whole segue into getting to talking about, hey, we don't eat tomato leaves. We don't eat green potatoes. We don't eat potato leaves or eggplant leaves or chili leaves. We're just eating the fruit. And then that can segue into what's the difference between a fruit and a vegetable, like Vanessa was saying.
Well, I was going to ask that question.
So I like to, just generally, I like to say a fruit is something you eat after it flowers, whereas a vegetable is something you eat before it flowers. So my first thing is broccoli. Kids, you know, what's broccoli? They're like, it's a tree, it's a miniature tree. I'm like, well, you know, not quite, but, you know, all those little green things at the top that you think would be the leaves on the big tree, those are just unopened flower buds. They're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, so when you eat broccoli, you're just eating flowers. And they kind of like stun silence for a second, then some kids are super into it, and some are like, that's just weird.
Is that why they call them flowerets?
I think so, yeah, and cauliflower. Usually a kid will be like, well, is that why it's called cauliflower then? And I'm like, there you
exactly.
go. Yeah.
Give this boy an A.
Exactly.
So one of the things we talked about before we went to break was the math, and I mentioned scheduling. So what's a great thing to plant right now, or is there some scheduling date issues you'd like to talk about?
Well, you know, here in April and May, we're making sure we're getting all of our melons in, and, you know, summer squashes. I know a lot of people cheat earlier on their winter squash, which we're usually putting in June or July. I feel like it's fair to kind of cheat on spaghetti squash and stuff like that. Pumpkins I like to hold off on a little bit. And then in May I like to do, okra is great, loves the heat. And then cotton is something I grew for the first time last year. And me being a giant 2-year-old and shoving things in my mouth, I took one of the bolls, B-O-L-L, off the cotton when it was young, about, you know, smaller than a golf ball, about half the size of a golf ball. And I cut it open and I, you know, threw it in my mouth like an idiot and started eating it. And you could feel the texture. It was starting to become cotton, but not quite there. But it was incredibly sweet. I'm like, gosh, is this where cotton candy came from? Like the concept of that?
Oh.
But I'm not quite sure.
Is it that sweet?
That's lost. Yeah, it's sugary sweet. It's not quite like, it's sweeter than on sugar cane almost. To be honest with you, it's insane.
And so immediately I'm wondering, why in the heck were you growing cotton? What are you going to do with cotton?
Well, it was at a seed swap at Summerlin Library, which I'm sure there'll be another one, but we got some in, I think it was back in June. So I managed to get my hands on 3 different types of cotton. I think they originally came from Native Seed Search down in Tucson, Arizona, but there was a white cotton, a green cotton, and a brown cotton.
Really, those colors?
Yeah, those colors. So the brown is like Sacaton brown, and the other, I can't remember the variety names for the other ones, to be honest with you, but I was like, I want to see how cotton grows. I've never seen it before. I was just interested in seeing how it goes, and so threw it in one of the garden beds at San Miguel Community Garden, and sure enough, it came up happy as can be, and it was even fighting off some crabgrass in the same bed.
Really?
So it's pretty resilient and loves the heat.
Nice. So did you weave a shirt or something?
You know what? I harvested. Yeah, my sweatshirt today. No, I harvested a whole lot of bulbs and gave them to a friend of mine over at Happy Earth Market, and she's probably going to do some spinning and making some stuff with them.
Okay, great. How about fruit trees? What can we grow here?
Gosh, just about everything. You want to pay attention to the USDA hardiness zones. So they'll give you like a range. It's usually a single-digit number. We only have 10s and 11s like in Florida or the south tip of Texas. So here in the Las Vegas Valley, we're like a 9. And there's also A and B, but you could almost ignore those. But they have a small difference for people who are hardcore. But we're a 9, so a lot of things are usually going to be between 3 and 7, 3 and 8. But you can cheat a zone by mulching. Mulch is your best friend. I can't stress it enough. Mulching, keeping the soil cool and moist, maybe getting some afternoon shade if it's something that doesn't need full day of sun. And really, for our full day of sun, we get a lot of sun. So giving stuff a break in the afternoon is great. But things I'm always trying to push on people are the heat and drought tolerant trees. So like the pomegranates, the figs, the jujubes, Peruvian apple cactus. It's a tall columnar cactus that has fruits on it, kind of like dragon fruit. As far as the look and the taste a little bit too, but they're kind of an oblong reddish football. You cut them open, they're white with the speckled black seeds inside, but they just don't have those sharp tongues like the dragon fruit too on the outside.
So I've heard that citrus you can grow them, but you have to really protect them.
Yeah, in the winter you just got to throw some burlap over them just in case there's going to be any frost. This past winter was so light that a lot of people pulled everything off early, and then in March we had like one last go of it. So a lot of people got some frost damage. So you can look at your citrus trees right now and you can see the frost damage clear as day. There's just going to be a certain point on the stems where it's green below and yellow above or brown. So just clip right there, clip out all your frost damage, you're going to get a new flush of growth with leaves.
And so how about trees in pots? Does that go well?
Well, citrus is great for that actually.
So then you can move them up close to the house.
You can move them up closer to the house, and especially getting into that sort of deal, you can move them inside the house or inside a covered patio, or with stuff in pots. You can put it right up against the house. As long as the house is south facing or west facing, it'll absorb all that heat through the day and then radiate it out at night. So you won't even have to cover it with burlap in a lot of cases.
Because the frosts aren't typically that bad here. So we want to plug SciFest one more time. Go to scifest.vegas, find out all about that. We want to plug Green Our Planet and Garden Farms. They're doing great things with the STEAM program at the schools. And we want to also plug that the Green Gala Awards is coming up on March 19th from 6:30 to 8:30, 650 South Buffalo. $55 for members, $65 for non-members. And we're going to be giving an award to Chris Brooks. So everybody show up. And that's it for us this week on Shades of Green. I'm Paul Ira, your host. Have a great week and keep it green out there.